Imagine a town built in the heart of the jungle, cut off from the outside world, a place where rain can fall for 4 years, and where death and miracles can happen in a single day. That is Macondo, and this is the story of 100 years of life and solitude of one family. 100 Years of Solitude is the masterpiece of Colombian writer and Nobel Prize laureate Gabriel García Márquez, first published in 1967. This book is a hallmark of the magical realism style in Latin American literature, a rare blend of reality and fantasy that blurs the boundary between the two. Its translations, awards, and worldwide popularity have placed it among the most important novels of the 20th century. General summary. In the heart of the Colombian jungle, a family named Buendía builds a new town called Macondo, a place that, at first, feels like a peaceful and isolated paradise, untouched by the outside world. The arrival of traveling gypsy caravans brings with it a universe of wonders and strange inventions, from magnets to the camera. Among these gypsies is a mysterious man named Melquiades, who secretly follows the fate of Macondo and its inhabitants. The story chronicles the lives of 7 generations of the Buendía family, in which the fire of love, the heat of war, impossible dreams, and profound loneliness are woven together like intertwined threads. The men of the family drift between idealism and the bitter weight of reality, while the women stand firm between loyalty and the silent endurance of pain. In this world, extraordinary events are told with such calm simplicity that they seem like an ordinary part of daily life. Rain that lasts for years, a strange illness that robs people of their memories, or a woman ascending to the sky in broad daylight. Over the course of a century, the history of Macondo unfolds like a recurring cycle, names, mistakes, and dreams passed from one generation to the next. This cycle confronts us with the heavy and profound notion of solitude, a solitude that tells not only the fate of one family but perhaps the very nature of the human condition. Now it's time to step back a little from Macondo and see what magic Márquez has hidden in this story that has made it one of the most important works of world literature. In the boundless expanse of world literature, there are works that transcend the borders of language and culture, weaving themselves into the very fabric of human experience. Novels that not only tell a story but become a lived experience, a self-contained universe, a world that imposes itself upon the reader with all its being. Among these towering peaks, 100 Years of Solitude, Cien Años de Soledad, the immortal creation of Gabriel García Márquez, is undoubtedly one of the brightest and most influential. It is not merely a book, but an act of creation, a fictional cosmos born from the rebellious soil of Latin America, whose echoes resound through every corner of the human mind and soul anywhere on this planet. Márquez, the sovereign of words, was not simply a storyteller, but a sorcerer of language, an alchemist who fused reality with imagination and distilled from it a pure and wondrous essence. He revealed to the world a face of Latin America that had long been obscured by clichés and superficial perceptions. He transformed magical realism from a literary technique into a worldview, a way of seeing and living. In this vision, extraordinary events, like the innocent ascension of Remedios the beauty into the sky amidst fluttering sheets, or the 5-year rain that drowns a town, do not appear as supernatural phenomena in need of scientific justification, but as a natural and inseparable part of the texture of everyday life. This narrative approach allows Márquez to delve into the deepest philosophical, political, and social truths without direct rhetoric, concealing pains as old as a continent beneath the veils of fantasy and allegory. It is in this enchanted threshold that bitter realities, from colonialism and dictatorship to poverty and ignorance, meet the endless beauty of nature and the passion for life, giving birth to a story like no other. Published in 1967, 100 Years of Solitude stormed through the literary world immediately upon release. The speed and span of its reception were astonishing, and the name of Márquez was suddenly on everyone's lips. The novel found countless readers not only in Latin America but all across the globe, from Europe to Asia, and was translated into many languages. The pinnacle of this success came in 1982, when Gabriel García Márquez was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. The Nobel Committee cited his novels and short stories, in which the fantastic and the realistic are combined in a richly composed world of imagination, reflecting a continent's life and conflicts. This honor was not only a personal triumph for Márquez but also a seal of recognition for the credibility and power of Latin American literature on the global stage, an acknowledgement for a literary tradition that had until then remained largely overlooked by the Western literary establishment. At the heart of the novel lies the epic and tragic saga of the Buendía family, a lineage that begins its life in the swamps and silent virgin forests, driven by the utopian dream of a place called Macondo. From its passionate and curious founder, José Arcadio Buendía, whose obsession with knowledge and invention laid the town's foundations, to his patient and resilient wife, Ursula Iguaran, who becomes a living emblem of endurance and memory. Across 7 generations, we witness the births and deaths of characters seemingly doomed to repeat the names, destinies, loves, and mistakes of those before them. Every Aureliano inherits a legacy of solitude and obsession, every José Arcadio inherits a legacy of passion and excess. This repetition is mirrored not only in their names but in their patterns of behavior, in forbidden loves, political failures, and ultimately, in their profound loneliness. Macondo itself grows alongside the family, from a small, secluded village to a bustling town with railways and foreign companies, before gradually slipping into decay and oblivion. This parallel between the fate of the family and the fate of the town becomes a powerful metaphor for the life cycle and demise of entire civilizations. But why is 100 Years of Solitude, with all its complexity and hidden layers, so captivating and inspiring for contemporary readers, even those who are not deeply familiar with the historical and cultural context of Latin America? The reason for its lasting impact lies in Márquez's astonishing ability to grapple with the fundamental questions of human existence, questions that have engaged the human mind across all eras and cultures. Does history repeat itself? Are we trapped in an endless labyrinth of recurring events, or is this repetition merely an illusion? The novel evokes an uncanny sense of déjà vu, as if we are constantly returning to a place we've already been. To what extent is our fate predetermined? Are the Buendía characters merely puppets in the hands of destiny, or can they alter their path through their choices? The novel conveys a profound sense of determinism, yet also depicts moments of individual rebellion and striving for freedom. Loneliness in 100 Years of Solitude is not just an emotion, it is a hereditary affliction, a destiny inescapable. This solitude stems from an inability to connect deeply, or from the loss of memory and roots. But is this not also a reflection of the modern human's profound isolation in today's world, despite being surrounded by countless means of communication? From military dictatorships to the influence of foreign corporations, the novel poignantly reveals how power, even when guided by good intentions, can lead to corruption and destruction. This is a universal concern present in every society. The plague of insomnia and forgetfulness that grips Macondo is a striking metaphor for the danger of losing collective and historical memory. Is not a nation that forgets its own history doomed to repeat it? The novel serves as a reminder that to build a better future, one must remember the past, no matter how painful it may be. In the continuation of this analysis, we will journey step by step into this wondrous world, from a close examination of the complex and multifaceted Buendía family members, each a mirror reflecting an aspect of the human condition, to decoding the rich themes and hidden symbols woven into the fabric of the story. We will explore how magical realism, far from being a mere tool of entertainment, becomes a language for expressing deep and often bitter truths. Finally, we will reflect on the timeless connection between this masterpiece and our lives today, in a world that increasingly resembles a global Macondo. Are you ready to step into the magical labyrinth of 100 years of solitude and uncover its secrets? If we were to imagine 100 years of solitude as a living body, its veins would be filled with the events of the story, but its beating heart would undoubtedly be the Buendía family and their unforgettable characters. Márquez is not merely telling a tale, he chronicles the fate of a family over 7 generations, a family in which each member is a piece of the intricate puzzle of destiny, solitude, historical repetition, and decay. In this section, we will delve into the inner worlds of these characters, their complex relationships, and, most importantly, their role in reflecting the novel's core themes, showing how each of them mirrors their shared, inescapable fate, yet with their own unique variations and complexities. At the head of this family stand 2 main pillars, from whom everything that follows springs forth, a couple seemingly chosen by fate to begin, and endlessly repeat, a cycle, José Arcadio Buendía and Ursula Iguaran. Their relationship is not only the foundation of the town of Macondo, but also the source of all the complexities and curses that will befall the family. José Arcadio Buendía is the founder, an idealist, and a lonely genius, an embodiment of the pioneering spirit and the rebellious mind. With his utopian dreams, strange intuitions, and insatiable madness for discovery, he makes it clear from the outset that the characters in this novel are not ordinary people. Fleeing his homeland out of fear of bearing a child with a pig's tail, he builds the town of Macondo deep within virgin jungle, a utopia far from civilization that gradually slides toward decay and isolation. His scientific and philosophical fervor is an unquenchable thirst to understand the world, from attempts to discover the uses of magnets and transmute metals into gold, to endless hours staring at the sky in search of the mechanism of the stars. With the help of gypsies, he even seeks to unravel the mystery of ice, a phenomenon that, in tropical Macondo, takes on a meaning beyond matter, becoming a symbol of the distant, the unknown, and even death itself. Yet this feverish hunger for knowledge, instead of releasing him, drives him into isolation and eventually into total madness. For years beneath the chestnut tree, he murmurs only to himself, to the ghosts of the dead, and to his endless memories. His madness is not merely an illness but a deeper symbol, the failure of utopia before stubborn realities, humanity's inability to escape fate, and the fine line between brilliance and madness. He is the forerunner of the solitude and isolation that will repeat in the generations that follow, the solitude of a thinker whose ideas cannot find a place in his own society. Opposite him stands Ursula Iguaran, the grandmother, the memory, and the unquestioned pillar of the family. Ursula may be the strongest, most clear-sighted, and most enduring figure in the novel. She is the embodiment of resilience, perseverance, collective memory, and feminine endurance. Living for more than a century, she witnesses all of Macondo's transformations, its wars, loves, and the rise and fall of 7 generations of Buendías. She is the life-giving force, the organizer, and the preserver of survival in the midst of historical chaos. With extraordinary wit and intelligence, she repeatedly rescues the family from economic and social ruin, manages businesses, and even expands the house to meet the growing needs of the clan. She stands against the madness of the Buendía men, bringing them back down to earth, defending traditions and morality. Yet in the end, even she cannot resist the family's overwhelming fate. She is the living memory of the clan, one who remembers names and events, binds the past to the present, and warns against repeating mistakes. But by the end of her life, she loses her sight and her memories begin to blur, becoming a symbol of the gradual erosion of collective memory, the impossibility of fully transmitting experience, and the inevitability of forgetting in the face of time's flood. Despite her strength and perseverance, Ursula is ultimately defeated by the family's curse and inescapable destiny, and it is here that her tragedy reaches its peak. From the first generation of founders, we arrive at the second, heirs not only to names but, in part, to destinies, two brothers, each embodying a different facet of human potential and a different fate, José Arcadio, II, and Colonel Aureliano Buendía. José Arcadio, II, is raw energy and unrestrained instinct. He inherits his father's name but not his scientific madness. Instead, he inherits raw physical strength, unbridled sexuality, and a roving spirit. He is the embodiment of primal human urges, bodily power, carnal boldness, and wandering adventure. His life is filled with escapades, debauchery, sea voyages, and a passionate affair with Pilar Ternera, from whom he has an illegitimate child. Rather than seeking meaning in science or war, he finds it in physical pleasures and sensory experience. But this path also condemns him to his own kind of solitude, one born from overindulgence and the inability to find deeper meaning beyond desire. He ends his life in seclusion, a symbol of the fact that even a life of pleasure cannot free one from the shadow of solitude. And then there is Colonel Aureliano Buendía, the defeated charisma of power in isolation. He is perhaps one of the novel's most complex, magnetic, and tragic figures, a symbol of rebellion, feudal struggle, the death of ideals, and the lonely exile of a leader. He devotes his life to fighting endless civil wars between liberals and conservatives. Out of the 32 wars he initiates, he loses them all, defeats that are not only military but symbolic of the failure of idealism in the face of corrupt, dirty politics. After years of fighting, he awakens to the emptiness and circular nature of violence, withdrawing into a bitter solitude where he spends his days making tiny gold fishes. This occupation becomes a metaphor for seeking peace in small, seemingly insignificant tasks after failing at grand ambitions, or perhaps, a longing to return to the lost innocence of childhood. He fathers 17 illegitimate sons named Aureliano, all murdered in a single night, a sign that his efforts, ideals, and legacy are doomed to fruitlessness. The colonel's solitude is that of a leader crushed beneath the weight of history, repelled by his own achievements, and awakened to their futility. In a way, he foresees the slow decline of Macondo itself. These recurring patterns in names and destinies lead us toward the ideas of the cycle of time and determinism. The characters, despite their apparent differences and individual personalities, are somehow condemned to live out versions of their ancestors' lives, as though a curse or an inevitable fate rules over this family. This repetition is found not only in the names, but also in behavioral patterns, romantic choices, and even the ways they die. This circular recurrence is one of the novel's strengths, intensifying the reader's sense of fatalism. We then move on to later generations, who add further complexity to the story and reveal new dimensions of solitude and repetition. Arcadio, the son of Pilar Ternera and José Arcadio, II, is the unfinished dictator. A passionate, proud, and authoritarian young man, he rises to power in a short and turbulent period, only to be killed due to his tyrannical nature and reckless decisions. He symbolizes unrestrained lust for power and its devastating consequences in Latin America, a fate repeated many times in the history of the continent. Arcadio shows how power, even in the hands of those who hold revolutionary ideals, can lead to corruption and oppression. Remedios the beauty, otherworldly innocence and detachment from worldly possessions. She is one of the most extraordinary and unreal characters, a girl of breathtaking beauty who seems not to belong to this world at all. She embodies ethereal beauty, absolute innocence, and complete unawareness of material existence. Remedios is the symbol of unattainable and pure beauty that drives men to madness, but she herself is free from all worldly attachments. In the end, without harming anyone or being influenced by her surroundings, she ascends to the sky while folding sheets, carried away by wind and the scent of flowers, freeing herself from the earthly destiny of the family. Her ascension is not a physical death but a magical metaphor for purity, innocence, and liberation from material bonds and the family curse. She is the only character to miraculously break free from the cycle of repetition. And then come the countless Aurelianos, generations of Aurelianos who each inherit the madness, isolation, genius, and at times the violence of their grandfather, Colonel Aureliano, though in different ways. One seeks refuge in knowledge and books, another in art and music, and some in sheer withdrawal and indifference. This repetition of names, while reinforcing the sense of inevitability, also suggests that in each generation, people, despite similar genetics and fate, still find different ways to cope with their solitude and destiny, though ultimately all arrive at some form of isolation and emptiness. These Aurelianos seem like repeated versions of an original blueprint, each appearing with small variations, yet bound to an unchanging fate. One of the key aspects in analyzing the Buendía characters is their relationships, both with each other and with the outside world. These relationships are often marked by misunderstandings, forbidden loves, due to close kinship, one of the main causes of the family curse, and an inability to establish deep, genuine connections. Love arises sometimes from lust, sometimes from necessity, and sometimes from an inexplicable attraction, but most often ends in tragedy. For Márquez, these relationships are a kind of human laboratory to examine psychological complexities, social taboos, and the very nature of love and human connection. Each relationship becomes a microcosm reflecting the larger patterns of the novel, from passionate, all-consuming loves to broken and fragmented bonds, from acts of maternal sacrifice to hidden betrayals. They are full of the heat and vitality of life, but always overshadowed by a deep loneliness and a sense of inevitable fate. Finally, we come to the last generation of the family, Aureliano Babylonia and Amaranta Ursula. They are the children of an uncle and niece whose forbidden love brings the family curse to its conclusion. Their love, which results in the birth of a child with a pig's tail, is a symbol of the family's ultimate decay and the end of the repeating cycle. Aureliano Babylonia is the character who, by translating Melquiades' parchments, uncovers the secret of the Buendía family and the destiny of Macondo. He is the final seeker of meaning and knowledge, the one who ultimately breaks the cycle, but the breaking of that cycle comes at the cost of the family's complete extinction. This element affirms the notion of a predetermined fate that was present from the very beginning of the novel. The ending, with the revelation of this secret and the destruction of Macondo and the last of the Buendías, leaves the reader with a profound sense of solitude, oblivion, and closure. Taken as a whole, the characters of 100 Years of Solitude can be seen as a remarkable gallery of archetypes, from the steadfast, dignified matriarch, Ursula, to the mad philosopher and seeker, José Arcadio Buendía, the charismatic yet defeated leader, Colonel Aureliano, or the ethereal and unattainable beauty, Remedios the Beauty. They are less individual people than embodiments of human nature within the framework of a repetitious history, an inescapable destiny, and a decaying society. With all their complexities, aspirations, failures, and solitudes, they invite the reader to a deeper understanding of the human condition and the eternal cycles of life, death, love, madness, and forgetfulness. Perhaps the most important lesson from analyzing the Buendía characters is this: despite all their efforts, loves, wars, and achievements, some hidden, powerful force seems to have shaped their fates from the very beginning. Through its characters, the novel poses a profound question: is our life merely a repetition of past patterns, or can we, by our own free will, break the cycle of destiny? The answer Márquez offers is complex and multifaceted, leading us into the next part of this analysis, themes and symbols, where we will delve into deep ideas such as time, solitude, determinism, memory and forgetfulness, and magical realism, exploring how these characters serve as vessels for these abstract concepts. If the characters of 100 Years of Solitude are like the strong pillars of a towering structure, it is now time to discover the ornamentation, design, and hidden architecture of that structure, the themes and symbols that elevate the novel beyond a mere family saga into a global masterpiece. Márquez masterfully weaves these abstract concepts into the fabric of the narrative, so that every event and every object can reflect a deeper truth. This section is an invitation to uncover those hidden layers and to understand the symbolic language of Márquez. At the heart of this labyrinth lies a concept from which the novel's very title emerges, a concept that looms like a shadow over the Buendía family: solitude. This solitude is not merely a feeling, it is a fate, a chronic ailment, and an inherited trait within the family. But what does solitude mean in 100 Years of Solitude? In this novel, solitude is not merely physical isolation, but rather an existential condition, an inability to establish deep and authentic connections with others, even with the closest members of one's own family. Each member of the Buendía family, in some form, experiences this solitude. José Arcadio Buendía, the founder of Macondo, driven by his madness and insatiable curiosity for discovery, is eventually cast out from his community, dying in complete isolation beneath a chestnut tree. His solitude is that of a thinker lost in his own inner world, detached from the realities around him. Colonel Aureliano Buendía, despite leading a rebel army and fathering countless children, is, at the deepest level, alone. His solitude is that of a defeated leader who has abandoned his ideals and recognized the futility of his struggles. By crafting little gold fish, he attempts to fill his existential void, but peace never comes to him. Amaranta, the colonel's sister, experiences her solitude through unfulfilled romances, rejecting her suitors, and ultimately burning her own hand. Hers is the solitude born of a conscious choice to remain isolated, out of fear of vulnerability in relationships. Even Ursula, the unwavering pillar of the family, finds herself engulfed in solitude in her final years, as she loses her sight and her memory fades away. This solitude is not only individual but collective. Macondo, a town founded in isolation from the world, ultimately succumbs to its own solitude and oblivion. In the novel, solitude serves as a metaphor for the fate of Latin America, a continent cut off from the outside world, trapped in a cycle of repeating its own history and mistakes. This theme invites reflection on the nature of human connection and the high cost of isolation. The second, and perhaps the most powerful, theme in the novel is time and repetition. In 100 Years of Solitude, time is not linear, it is circular. History repeats itself, and patterns and events occur over and over again in different forms. This repetition is not only seen in the names, multiple José Arcadios and Aurelianos, but also in destinies, character traits, and even key events. The men of the Buendía family often descend into madness or isolation, and are frequently named José Arcadio or Aureliano. The women are typically strong, practical, and tied to household affairs, as with Ursula or Amaranta Ursula. Doomed love stories, particularly those between close relatives, reoccur and ultimately lead to the birth of a child with a pig's tail. Civil wars, strikes, and interference by foreign powers, such as the Banana Company, reflect the recurrence of political and economic patterns in Latin American history. This cyclical repetition not only reinforces the sense of inevitability, but also conveys the message that history, especially the history of Latin America, is condemned to repeat itself unless lessons are learned from the past. In the novel, time sometimes stops, sometimes moves backward, and at times races forward at a dizzying pace, all mirroring the mindset of magical realism and challenging the reader to reconsider their own understanding of time. It is impossible to speak of 100 Years of Solitude without addressing its most essential stylistic element, magical realism. This is what distinguishes the novel from an ordinary family saga, giving it both mythical and universal dimensions. Magical realism seamlessly blends supernatural and extraordinary elements into everyday reality, so naturally that none of the characters are ever surprised by these marvels, they accept them as an ordinary part of life. The ascension of the beautiful Remedios to the sky with the bed sheets is one of the most iconic examples. The appearance of ghosts, such as Pilar Ternera or Prudencio Aguilar, who converse casually with the living. The dreams of José Arcadio Buendía and his connection with the gypsies who carry arcane wisdom. The torrential 48-hour rainfall, reminiscent of the Great Flood, symbolizing cleansing and oblivion. In the novel, magical realism serves purposes beyond aesthetic beauty. It reflects the beliefs and folklore of Latin America, where the line between reality and myth is blurred. It serves as a tool for expressing complex, and at times inexpressible, truths in symbolic and allegorical ways. It provides a veil for social and political critique, allowing even tragedies and injustices to be narrated in the same enchanted tone. And ultimately, it is an invitation to go beyond pure logic and embrace the multiple dimensions of truth. Márquez's magical realism has shifted the boundaries of storytelling and left a deep mark on world literature. Beyond these three main themes, the novel is brimming with recurring symbols and motifs, each adding a new layer to the story's meaning. The Gypsies and Melquiades. The gypsies symbolize the outside world, knowledge, and mysterious forces entering Macondo, bringing change and transformation. Melquiades, with his manuscripts and prophecies, plays the role of a prophet or a hidden chronicler. His manuscripts not only recount the story of the Buendía family, but also stand as a symbol of the power of storytelling and the preservation of collective memory against oblivion. Macondo, this town transforms from a lost paradise in the heart of the jungle, to a thriving settlement, and finally into a ruin. Macondo symbolizes the cycle of life, growth, decay, and forgetfulness of civilizations, an allegory for the history of Latin America and the erosion of utopias in the face of reality. Water, rain/flood/lake water appears in various forms and serves as a symbol of change, cleansing, destruction, and rebirth. The prolonged rain, 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days, symbolizes both natural and human catastrophe, as well as the purification that precedes a new cycle. Blood and kinship, blood ties, particularly forbidden incestuous relationships, are not only the main cause of the family's curse, but also a symbol of genetic determinism and inherited fate. The pig's tail on the last newborn marks the climax of this curse and serves as a sign of original sin and its repetition. Gold and precious stones, symbols of wealth, power, and corruption, often accompanied by deception and violence. José Arcadio's attempts to produce gold, and later the arrival of the banana company that exploits Macondo's wealth, are both tied to this motif. Memory and forgetfulness. At its core, the novel is a battle between memory and oblivion. Márquez repeatedly treats forgetfulness as a disease, a weapon, or a destiny. The characters' struggle to preserve memories, alongside their gradual erosion, symbolizes the vital importance of history and collective identity in the face of oblivion. Taken together, 100 Years of Solitude, through these themes and symbols, transcends the form of a novel to become a myth, a paradigm for understanding history, and a deep meditation on human nature. Through these elements, Márquez has not only created an unforgettable story, but has also opened a window into his unique worldview and the rich culture of Latin America. These are the very elements that make 100 Years of Solitude a multi-layered, timeless work, one in which each rereading reveals new layers of meaning. Up to this point, we have journeyed through the labyrinth of 100 Years of Solitude, we have lived alongside its characters, felt the ache of their solitude, shared in the relentless cycle of their time and fate, and engaged with the mysteries of its magical realism. But the question remains, what does a novel written more than half a century ago have to say to a 21st century reader? How can we hear the echoes of 100 years of solitude in our own lives today, and what aspects of our reality does this magical mirror reflect back at us? One of the most powerful qualities of this novel is the universality of its themes. Solitude, destiny, and determinism, the cyclical repetition of history, and the search for meaning are not concepts bound to Latin America or the last century. In our own time, despite digital connectivity, social media, and constant access to others, has solitude not become deeper and more pervasive? The solitude born of the absence of authentic connections, being submerged in a virtual world, and the inability to form lasting human bonds, does it not mirror the isolation of the Buendias? Like them, we too can feel alone in a crowd, searching for a meaning we have somehow lost. And what of history's endless repetition? Do today's political and social events, across varying corners of the world, not echo the same cyclical patterns of power, exploitation, and hollow conflicts we witnessed in Macondo? Despite unprecedented access to information and history, humanity still falls into the same errors, failing to learn the lessons of the past. It is as if Macondo is not just a town, but a symbol for any society doomed to repeat its fate. Through his magical realism, Márquez erases the dividing line between reality and fantasy, and this is precisely what we need today. In a world where fake news and alternative facts blur the boundaries of truth, are we not living our own form of modern magical realism? A reality so fluid that it can at times be indistinguishable from illusion. The power of storytelling and the preservation of narratives, embodied in Melquiades's manuscripts, remain just as critical now in the face of the waves of forgetfulness and historical distortion. The novel reminds us that to understand our identity and destiny, we must know our story and protect it. 100 Years of Solitude is also a striking commentary on colonialism and neocolonialism. The arrival of the Banana Company and the exploitation of Macondo's resources and labor symbolize the intervention of powerful nations and multinational corporations in developing countries. This pattern, although altered in form, persists in today's world, and Márquez's Little Macondo becomes a metaphor for any country whose identity and resources are pressed upon by foreign powers. The novel, with remarkable subtlety, reveals the devastating effects of such interventions, the erosion of traditions, labor unrest, and ultimately, destruction and oblivion. Ultimately, the novel is an invitation to embrace the complexity of life and to move beyond rigid, linear logic. By weaving magic with reality, Márquez shows us that life is full of contradictions, oddities, and unexpected turns. In a world eager to simplify and categorize, 100 Years of Solitude urges us to allow space for ambiguities, for the unknown, and for the irrational parts of our being. This lesson is especially valuable in our era, when we face an overwhelming flood of information and complex decisions. The novel teaches us that at times, we must look for truth beyond what we see or think we understand. Our journey through 100 Years of Solitude now reaches its close, but its impact and resonance are boundless. It is not merely a literary masterpiece, but a complete cosmos, a place where time, space, history, myth, reality, and fantasy intertwine to tell the story of human destiny. With 100 Years of Solitude, Márquez did not simply write a novel, he gifted world literature a world, a vision, and a language of its own. This work, with all its complexity and layers, invites reflection on the nature of time, the meaning of solitude, the ceaseless cycle of life and death, and the unmatched power of love and pain. 100 Years of Solitude reminds us that past, present, and future are interwoven, and that an individual's fate cannot be separated from the fate of their community and history. This book is a mirror, not just for Latin America, but for all of humanity, reflecting our strengths and weaknesses, our hopes and despair, and our blend of magic and reality. At Art Lens, our goal is not just to read books, but to live them, to peel away their hidden layers and find their connections to our modern lives. We believe literature goes beyond entertainment. It is a guide, a way to understand the world, ourselves, and the answers to our existential questions. 100 Years of Solitude is a perfect example of this power, a novel that is not only read, but experienced, and after which the world around us appears forever changed. We are grateful to you, our dear companions, for joining us on this profound and challenging journey. We hope this analysis has opened new windows to your understanding of 100 Years of Solitude and encouraged you to explore even deeper into the world of literature. Your thoughts, perspectives, and questions are valuable to us. Join the conversation in the comments. This may be the end of our journey with the Buendía family, but it is the beginning of countless other journeys in the boundless realm of literature. Stay with Art Lens, so together, we can see the world through the lens of art and words. Until the next review, farewell.